Steam's NEXTfest has become something of a quarterly tradition in online spaces, a means for us to take a breather from the landslide of new releases and think about what's on the horizon. This video features a collection of demos I tried out and my thoughts on why I think you should pay attention to them. Let it be known that I am a man who loves creations like this, a playful, gloriously spongy adventure game where you play an AI construct rudely transposed from the snug confines of your submarine into an unfamiliar body, tasked with making sense of the underwater facility you find yourself trapped in, and engaging with a strange operating system on more than one front. This is truly alien in the best possible way, a sequence of puzzles built around Byzantine world logic, a wonderfully chunky ergonomic UI like a Fisher-Price Ridley Scott tie-in, things to plug in, dials to turn and sequences to decipher, as much through intuition as through pattern recognition. Its story, a mysterious investigation into a space beyond the pale, where technology is as incomprehensible as it is goofy, offers up some cheerful banter in between bouts of decipherment, your companion gifting you some chirpy, albeit not entirely helpful correspondence as you make sense of this mysterious world, your new body, and what it is that you even need to be doing here. It's clashing yet coherent, to me at times feeling like a mix of Madison Carr and Cosmo D, you know, two artists whose work I absolutely adore. Panthalassa is the name of this game, and it's offered up a primer for something I think will end up being really special, leaving me hungry for the full release and confident in recommending this as one demo you really need to try out. A bit of a baffling thing at first glance. Anthropomorphic animals living in contemporary cyberpunk society under the iron boot of lagomorphic fascism. This exacting stealth platformer couples an unusual art style that I haven't really seen elsewhere, and a world that is gloriously ornate. KIYO Bunny Tyranny is an immediately striking prospect. The amount of work that has gone into the incidentals of this is really impressive, and as silly as the premise is, including the fact that your character is canonically controlled by you, the player, in-universe, this gives way to an experience that feels anything but. A fiendish gauntlet of precision platforming, light and dark stealth mechanics, and some tentative touches of immersive sim here and there. There's a good deal of fun to be had navigating this demo's trials. The controls are a little bit fiddly, it's the kind of game where you have to move and act with intent. Sometimes getting caught on bits of scenery or a precision shot not quite making its target will frustrate, but it's not really punishing like that. I'm really not sure what to make of this. There are elements of the gameplay, the world, and the narrative that intrigue me, but I'm far from excited. Give it a look and let me know what you think. Here at Static Canvas, we love a good-looking adventure game, and Phonopolis seems to be the final boss of this particular desire. The latest offering from the talented folks at Amanita Design, the studio behind some very classy, beautifully rendered titles like Samarost, Machinarium, and Pilgrims, the ceiling once more has been lifted, with an absolutely stunning result to be found here. Phonopolis is a really engaging, funny, and charming experience that couples this sort of papercraft vibe with some surprisingly intricate animations. Engaging with the game is a mix of classic point-and-click fare and stuff that feels like the cross-section of the Room series and, bear with me, this is a bit of a deep cut, old children's book CD-ROMs from the 90s like The Fish Who Could Wish. Playful, but with a puzzle box mentality. To be poked at, and your curiosity rewarded beyond the satisfaction of solving a conundrum. It may be that in the long run this is a case of production values over actual substance of the experience, but it's no great mystery why I let out an audible gasp of frustration when this demo ended. I'm well up for playing the full release of this. Another great entry for the mystery but not murder genre here. Mysteries of Old Tokyo is a procedural about identifying locations from the past using a mix of encyclopedic data and good old-fashioned boots-on-the-ground detective work. Built around a great retro-style user interface, one that's stylish but also really functional, there's a playful fiddliness to the means of engaging with the world here. Identifying required sentence construction is nothing new, of course, but it is elevated by coupling that core missing structure with map navigation that forces you to think beyond simple waypoints, and just generally learning a hell of a lot about the Tokyo of the past. Which is great in itself because it's an enormous, historically rich city, and it doesn't always get the most nuanced representation in popular media. Far from flashy, Mysteries of Old Tokyo is one that might be a hard sell on first glance, but in that understated presentation I found a lot to engage with, and I think this will be a fine addition to any detective game fan's portfolio. This is Horde of Viscount, which is also called Mob of Thin Mints in the US. That's a bit of biscuit-based humour there, maybe one for the workshop. Action platforming in a sort of Castlevania-esque manner, hints of movement tech and environmental navigation as the key challenge, some resource gathering and crafting elements in the mix too. I didn't spend a lot of time with this demo, being honest, as I felt I had clocked what it was all about early on, but all these disparate parts work together rather well. A means of engaging with the world in ways beyond simply following the golden path, capturing the mysterious energy of old Game Boy games with some esoteric menu scrolling, traipsing off the beaten path, and everything else you'd come to expect from a homage that really drills into the heart of the thing that inspired it. It's charming, but I'm not sure if it's anything I would pursue beyond this generous demo, as I found it a little rudimentary. However, it's certainly going to delight fans of this particular style of game. A Sokoban with some funky physics. Abysm is a series of puzzles in which you have to activate statues to unlock doors, but obviously it's not that simple. While your wily, legally distinct Indiana Jones knockoff can move omnidirectionally, the objects of this environment follow a gravitational pull from top to bottom. Your challenge, therefore, is to figure out how to navigate around these elements, avoiding being crushed to death, or, more frustratingly, simply boxed in. Its simple presentation and illuminated fog of war couple together nicely to present a space where you can't always see the bigger picture at first, and while it is irksome to get conked by a boulder seemingly out of nowhere, it's one of those games where getting back into the action is simple enough that you can return to where you left off in a matter of seconds. This seems decent. I can see myself losing sight of the brain space required for a game like this very quickly, but don't let that deter you. I'm just a bit thick like that. Okay, so this is just Final Fantasy Tactics but with American football rules, and that's not really a problem because it works incredibly well. A very cute interpretation of sport as a strategy RPG, the game so deftly apes Squaresoft's legendary cult classic that some might take umbrage with the level of mimicry on display here, but not me. I say copy away. When the execution ends up being this smooth, you really can't take issue. I love the chunky character work and low stakes of the endeavour, coupled with the drama of beating up your opponents or even setting them on fire just so you can steal a ball. I've always said that mainstream sport needs less big money investment and more black mages. I'm curious to see how the final work balances these two states of fantasy and football, whether the wrapper is just that or if there is something more tangible to be found within. What I found in playing this was a satisfying and different approach to a well-worn genre, and as a demonstration of what the game has to offer, Fantasy Football Tactics is far from an own goal. Eden's Inferno is a first-person Souls-like in both the positive and negative connotations of that moniker. Held up by a really engaging, cartoony art style, including a great main character design, you are tasked with escaping the confines of your cell, shooting everything in sight, dodging the bullets of your captors, and putting the boot into anyone who gets a little too close. The parry mechanic here is particularly unusual. As a means of deflecting melee attacks, its utility is fairly obvious, but it doubling up as a means of environmental navigation provides that mechanical duality thing that I really love to see in games. Although, it should be said, in both instances I found the process rather fiddly and hard to gauge whether I was doing it right. There is a fair bit of jank to be found in this demo, but it is, as the developer admits, a work in progress, and there's plenty of room for refinement here. The core idea is solid enough that I think fans of this genre will find a lot to like here. I'm curious to see how it expands into the wider experience. I'm always interested when a project has 80 Days co-writer Meghna Jayanth on board. I have a bit of a soft spot for her since she was the first person I ever interviewed back in the days when I was still pretending to be a games journalist, and I've always loved her writing style. Regardless of this though, this new project she's been working on with a score of talented folks at speculative agency, All Will Rise, has a lot of promise. An environmentally conscious, justice-seeking, anti-capitalist courtroom battler that, in this demo at least, has you arguing the case for a river's legal personhood as a means of protecting it from pollution. The core mechanics of connecting your arguments using cards as a stand-in for evidence and statements builds on this idea of justice not as an immutable fact, but rather a combination of empiricism and perspective. This journey is all about building a relationship of credibility as much as it is about statements of intent. Honestly, I'm surprised that the game manages to sell itself so well in just a demo, because projects like this are usually built on the long game, but I'm really excited to dig in more. At the time of writing, All Will Rise has a Kickstarter campaign running, which I'll link to in the show notes. A dangerously Moorish mix of resource gathering, match 3, and landscape shifting real-time strategy that is built within this fascinatingly singular presentation. A stage play that really hasn't been thought out properly, a world that is constantly transforming with fundamental gameplay elements explained to you with all the comprehension of a shrug and a grin. Titanium Court is very compelling. Even in this brief taster I found that I couldn't tear myself away, even down to the simplicity of those match 3 mechanics, which feel incredibly satisfying to work with, independent of the extra layer of strategy you employ in doing so. Keen likers of good video games will recognise Titanium Court's creator AP Thompson as one of the masterminds behind last year's Consume Me. The UI design sensibilities are almost immediately apparent, even if the art style is completely different, and they are used to great effect, crafting the illusion of something much bigger than it actually is. Even a cursory glance within these walls finds secrets and a slow drip of new mechanics throughout. This is just a great, playful little thing, and I think a lot of you are going to love it. If you don't like puns, look away now. May or May Knott is an incredibly daft, vibesy adventure game that is so clearly inspired by the oddities of the PS2 era. You accidentally inherit a literal ghost town and are tasked with restoring it to its former glory. It's a slow, meandering process that involves a lot of trading items and engaging with unusual residents, almost all of which are some form of ghastly apparition. This game's unique element comes in the form of a fear meter, where many of the town's denizens will spook you into a terror-strewn frenzy until you can build your courage up. You do so by making contact with the right people and figuring out an order of opportunity to make the most of your time stranded in this backwater municipality. It's a weird setup, but as someone who loves this sort of slow burn of an experience, it is absolute catnip. I think some work is needed on the user interface, especially the text boxes feel a little bit cheap and formatted strangely, but the character design and atmosphere are so strong that I see a lot of potential here. DownSouth is a gorgeously rendered genre staple, but there is clearly more to it than just that. Billed as a moral dilemma platformer, this game couples punchy movement tech with light combat, navigating a weird and wonderful world in pursuit of a nebulous something that gradually gets revealed over time. It wears its inspirations on its sleeve, cool spots by way of Sonic the Hedgehog, cartoony characters that exist in a grim, fantastical world. You are imbued with a soul, and this is where things take a slightly different direction. A tangible entity unto itself, as a mechanic it exists as an incorporeal vestigial limb that helps you to break barriers and capture and throw things. As a narrative element, there's clearly something else going on here. The game's marketing tasks you to ruminate on a particular question: what do you prioritize, your own needs or those of others? Choices affect your sanity, sanity affects how you play. What this actually boils down to, as per the description on the game's Kickstarter page, is a spectrum of speed and brutality. Self-preservation hardens you, altruism lightens the burden. It's a funny old arrangement when placed in the context of a game in which you play an anthropomorphic being, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't enduringly curious about where this game is going to go. Mario-esque shenanigans abound in Rosie Planet, a very cute, surprisingly fiendish platformer that somehow manages to channel perfectly the energy of that groundbreaking N64 classic, and more specifically the technological constraints of that particular entry. Cards on the table, this is not without its issues. An infuriatingly disrespectful camera and a touch of wobbliness in the controls mean that this is not as smooth an experience as I would like it to be. I almost wasn't going to feature it in this video, but there was something about it that grabbed me, a feeling like it really understood those more intangible qualities of that previous era of platform-hopping adventure. The unornamented art style, a landscape that is crisp and easy to read, clever enemy placement and environmental complications to make you think 3 steps ahead about your placement, momentum, and actions. I think that's part of the intrigue here. It doesn't feel like a modern platformer with that pixel-perfect attention to detail and responsiveness in the controls, but it also feels like those limitations have been baked into the way these levels and the hub world that contain them have been designed. Of all the demos featured here, this one has given me the biggest pause for consideration, a very unusual feeling experience for me. Let me know what you think about it. I'm not a big tabletop guy. In fact, I've only ever attended 2 Dungeons & Dragons sessions in my life, and they were both in the last fortnight. But I do know about MÖRK BORG, the brutally unusual pen and paper game made famous by its gorgeous presentation and unusual world. Apparently they made a video game version. Who'd have thought? It's an action RPG by design, although it does have touches of its tabletop heritage found within, and I'm not really into this, if I'm being honest. The combat is very stiff and basic. It plays a little bit like the Tales of Iron games, although not as smooth. I found myself getting quickly frustrated by how slow everything is, feeling very strongly like this would have benefited from being a turn-based affair instead, more akin to something like Darkest Dungeon. This is not to say that it isn't an impressive feat on an artistic level. The presentation here is genuinely stunning, capturing perfectly that chaotic, mangled swarm of eclectic fonts and jarring colour combinations. Maybe a bit more time and patience would serve me better here, but for now I'll leave this one to the superfans. Last year, as part of my end-of-year roundup, I spoke about the unusual Elegiac Easy Delivery Company, a fascinating, speedy mood piece that coupled mysterious vibes with a very satisfying central loop. In Deep Snow Delivery, that same energy is brought down to a much slower pace, a methodical mix of environmental navigation and package delivery. There are strong traces of Death Stranding to be found here too, but in itself I found an experience quite unique. From the telescopic crane used to pick up wayward objects in this Arctic tundra, to the precision and physics considerations of your inventory bobbing precariously up and down in the back of your truck, to the way that you have to zigzag your way across higher elevations in order to carry on your journey. It's those smaller details that make this a game to pay attention to, finding something precise and intricate in the way it handles those integrated elements, the weight of everything. This is not Easy Delivery Company, nor is it Death Stranding. It's its own thing, and I see it as evidence that there is something new to be found in old ideas. Fight Like You Have Wings is a tooltip that crops up early on in this demo for Neon Rain, and this is great advice for this expansive, brutal first-person shooter. It's a game about crowd control, ammo management, and getting about an enormous world as quickly as possible. You won't see it in this footage because I didn't clock it until later on, but bunny hopping with timing increases your speed exponentially, allowing you to zip along the corridors of this atmospheric megastructure at a rate of knots. The world itself is an oddity, a space seemingly far bigger than it should be, barren if but for a few scattered structures and a seemingly endless supply of things trying to kill you. Guns and feedback thereof is functional, albeit slightly weak feeling, but enemies are far from damage sponges. There's a nice balance of tearing through crowds and them surviving long enough to pose a significant threat to you still. Although I found myself at the tail end of a death spiral on multiple accounts here, it takes more than a bunch of spiders and zombified Cybermen to properly take you down. The promise of more tools for movement as the game progresses is an enticing prospect because that's this game's major selling point. The whole thing feels like the central point of an immersive sim boomer shooter Venn diagram. This could be one to keep an eye on. And that, my friends, is it. Those are the demos I played for this NEXTfest, some anticipated, some out of the blue. Let me know what you think about the ones you played, and I'll see you next time.